Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Football Diary podcast. Good to have you with us. It's me and Dave today, and it's got kind of a focus of the top of the Premier League table this time around, where the title race, is it a title race anymore? Liverpool streak ahead after beating Manchester City, who are falling ever further behind. Arsenal win 5-2 against West Ham. Chelsea win 3-0 against Aston Villa in a fantastic performance there. All to play for at the top. It's looking quite exciting all of a sudden, isn't it, Dave? But I mean, Liverpool streaking ahead. Who out of the rest of the pack are you looking at and thinking they could be challengers?
I think the ones who you think will probably maintain a bit of consistency in there, I think Arsenal for sure. And we were talking before this. You said you can make a case for Chelsea as well. With obviously how they're performing at the moment. Whether we'll have enough in the long run is another question. Man City, I mean, we'll come on to them, but it's not looking good for them, is it, at the minute?
It's crazy season, isn't it? I mean, we say Liverpool are streaking ahead, and we'll probably start there at Anfield, I think, with the conversation. But the chasing pack is really tight. From second down to sort of eighth, it feels like there's not much in it. So a bit of a glimmer of hope for Manchester United fans that maybe a title push is on the cards as well. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself there. But yeah, Liverpool, Dave, beating City 2-0. I think we all anticipated that the game would be quite straightforward for Liverpool because the form of the two teams couldn't have been more different going into this game, and Liverpool have just been irresistible, and we all had this image in our heads of Liverpool just controlling everything. And they did, but I don't think I expected it to be quite to this level, and I think that's the most impressive thing about this Liverpool performance is that they went full throttle for a good 20-25 minutes, but then kind of eased up and controlled the game from then on. And City had no answers whatsoever, looked completely bereft of confidence. And fair play to Arne Slot, he got his team really set up to exploit that lack of confidence from City, didn't he? And they looked like champions-elect in some ways. It was a great performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think they definitely targeted that first 20 minutes or so, where they did put a lot of energy and a lot of effort into that first portion of the game where they were really closing those spaces where looking to close down City where they like to build up. City just couldn't deal with that element of pressure in those early stages in the game, and you really sense that Liverpool thought they could take the game away from them in that first 20 minutes. And to be honest, City were fortunate not to be more than one down.
Yeah, definitely.
Very lucky, to be honest, because Liverpool created a lot of good opportunities in that stage of the game. I thought Mo Salah was his inventive best. I thought he created a lot of opportunities. I think for the first goal, that cross is inch perfect, and the pace that he puts on and the accuracy, obviously maintains that accuracy as well. I think he does superbly well. And Cody Gakpo, there might have been a few eyebrows raised. I think starting. I think a lot of people might have been expecting maybe Darwin Núñez to be starting this week because I thought this is probably tailor-made for him to come in and play this game. The amount of havoc he'll cause at the back and those runs, it can really stretch that City defence. But no, Gakpo came in and did really well, made his mark. Could have easily scored a couple more goals, to be honest.
Not just him, but Van Dijk as well at the back. He started the game brilliantly, should have scored with the header, shouldn't he, quite early on, and was a fantastic presence at the back too. And they just looked so calm, despite the defence being kind of a bit upside down for this game. They had obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold back in. They were missing Ibrahima Konate as well, so Joe Gomez came in. So there was a few changes at the back, didn't affect them at all. But going forward, like you say, I think you're right, Dave. They just looked brilliant. They were elements of like that he did. This is a team so high on confidence at the minute that I think they showed City a bit of mercy in some ways. They kind of eased up in the second half and controlled the game out of probably a bit of respect, I guess, for their opponents. But they could have gone full throttle, really, and thrashed them, couldn't they?
Yeah, like I say, if it was 3-0 after 20-25 minutes, you couldn't have really... I don't think any Liverpool fans would be saying that would have been unjust at all. I think they would have really deserved that, which obviously needed to be a little bit more clinical in that final third. Probably a little bit unfortunate at times not to have it drop their way, but I think with this performance, I think everyone will be looking at it and thinking, they are really looking like potential title winners, and the performance that really does show that. I think that City, after about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, started to come into the game a little bit more. They had a period of play of about 10 minutes, I think, and Liverpool managed to sort of stem the flow again then and take it up to half-time. And, again, they started the game in the second half a similar sort of way. And then it just never felt like Liverpool were in any trouble, to be honest, any time. No. I thought they contained Haaland very easily. thought he looked very flat, to be honest, in this game.
Yeah.
And I just think that's something that City struggle with now. I think now they've obviously not got Julian Alvarez in there, who can just give them something a little bit different. He just gets involved in the game more than what that Haaland does. I just think he gives that something that City are lacking now. I think it is quite predictable at times.
Yeah.
I think that's crazy to say, because this is this is Man City, who've dominated English football for the last 6 or 7 years. So
well, the bench still had the likes of De Bruyne and Grealish on it as well. So it's not like it's a weak team. Like, it is got most of its starters back in now. They're just not in any kind of confidence whatsoever. And Gvardiol as well, I thought he looked really shaky. Kay as well, he's 30, believe it or not now. I can't believe that, but he's kind of looking like a player who's past his best. And yeah, you suddenly think to yourself, how much is it going to cost to redo this Man City team? And probably quite a bit. There's a lot of aging players there, and that's the worry. And in contrast, Liverpool just look fresh, youthful, vibrant, with Salah being kind of the main, and Van Dijk obviously being the main kind of senior players. And they stepped up so well. And the balance between age and experience for Liverpool looks really good. And it's ominous, really. We're sitting here as Man United fans going, let's all laugh at City falling off as much as they have, but who's taking their place at the top? And it's bloody Liverpool. Like, it's the worst scenario for me and you. And for Man United fans, it's so conflicted to see this happening. But credit to Liverpool. They've evolved so well. Arne Slot, I was guilty of saying that he would have a tough transitional period. And I think I got them predicted as 5th at the start of the season, which looks laughable now. They're not going to fall out of the top 2 at all. There's no danger of that. So huge credit has to go to Slot really for that transition, and for the club for identifying him as a coaching talent that could progress what Jurgen Klopp already did. And that's what it feels like, doesn't it? Like an evolution of the way Klopp played to not necessarily a better way of football, but just a more controlling way of playing. Like, they don't go full on and attack teams from the start now. They do sort of seem like once they're in control, they hold it and they maintain it. And that has to be a mark of huge respect for Liverpool. And they did it to Real Madrid as well, let's not forget, in the Champions League. Yeah, they're probably the best team in Europe at the minute, I think.
Certainly up there. I mean, I find it difficult to say that, to be honest, where my loyalties lie. But I think if you look at how he's managed that squad, I mean, you look at the changes that he made from midweek against Madrid. Obviously, Conor Bradley came out, Trent came back in, and obviously you've got the likes of McAllister, who came in, obviously didn't play in midweek. Curtis Jones obviously played really well against Real Madrid. Obviously sat this one out. They've got good options there, and I think that shows a strength of the coach. I think that he's got these players feeling that importance in themselves, that they can contribute whenever they're called upon. I think about feeling valued as a player, I think is a really critical thing these days, particularly because, I think it's really difficult to actually manage, particularly in this day and age.
Especially for a big Premier League squad as well. Like, they need game time, but also not too much game time. So it's a balance in that Liverpool are getting quite right at the minute, and credit to them for that. Mo Salah, though, obviously came out in midweek when asked about his contract situation. Seems bizarre that this is still going on, that they haven't offered him anything yet. And he said, I'm disappointed that the club haven't even put an offer on the table. So for me, that means I'm more out than in, with his words. How do you see that playing out? Is this just a case of Liverpool seeing that this is a player at the end of is the best of his career and probably not worth the money that they're probably going to have to still pay for him? It's a shame if that's the case.
I think you look at his age, you probably expect this is going to be his last big contract. I think at his age, wherever he ends up. So I think money is obviously a massive thing. Which is crazy to say because you probably look at the money he's already earned in his career. But again, it's going to be his last big payday. So I suppose you can't really blame him for playing the game as such. But just to do it so publicly is probably, I think, what people are finding it a little bit ugly in a way, which I can kind of understand that. So maybe there's a bit of honesty in there.
There is, but I think if that's the case and he hasn't heard anything from the club, surely him of all players should have had some kind of communication about what the next steps are going to be or some kind of timeline of a decision. Sounds like he's not had any of that. That's a shame.
Yeah, perhaps so. And I mean, there's murmurs of other ongoings, isn't there, as well? Obviously, there's the situation with Van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Yeah.
So it's just not his situation that's they're looking to resolve. I'm sure there's other players that they're trying to deal with as well. They'll definitely be in a rush now to hush this situation because it's not healthy. I don't think this is going on around, this lingering over the club so publicly.
If there's anything that could undo the good work and the good form that's going on from these players at the minute, it's probably the backdrop of a contract dispute, isn't it? So let's see how that plays out. But speaking of contracts, Pep Guardiola obviously signed a 2-year deal quite recently. This is before this kick of form went into overdrive. So it's kind of weird to think that his job's on the line in some ways, isn't it? Because, I mean, with this kind of set of results, most managers would be under fire, especially at this level. I'm not sure they'd afford him that, Man City, as a, he's such a legendary manager. But what did you make of his, six fingers to the Liverpool fans at the end of the game? I found that really, thin-skinned. He's not got much of a thick skin against this kind of thing, has he? He really takes it personally, especially at Anfield for some reason.
Yeah, I think boils over, doesn't it?
Yeah.
With emotions, I think he does actually find it quite difficult to keep his cool in certain situations. We've seen it, over the years, to be honest. And we've seen it with the likes of Mourinho. When Mourinho was at Real Madrid, he really struggled, I think, in that period. And it does seem like these games against Liverpool, for some reason, I think he has got quite a bit of dislike towards them for one reason or another. But, I mean, it's the theatre of it. We love to see it. We don't like to see anything, we don't want it to be uneventful as such.
Yeah.
It's quite humorous to watch, to be fair.
There were shades of Mourinho, definitely, in that response. And then Stefan Ortega sort of came out, didn't he, and started slating Liverpool as a city, saying, I'd heard that Liverpool wasn't a great place to live and stuff like that. I don't know, it's just a bit classless, isn't it, really? Yeah. I'm not a fan of that kind of bitterness.
I mean, Manchester's not much better. Well, Manchester's okay, but I mean, it's not miles away, is it? Let's be honest. Yeah, I just think it's a bit bitter, isn't it? For me.
Yeah.
I do think that City at the minute, I don't think he's in any deal of trouble. I think they've got bigger things going on at the club. There's no secret there that there could be a few punishments on their way.
Yeah.
And they need any sort of stability and kind of consistency that they can hang on to within that hierarchy in that club at the moment, because they're going to need it if they do land themselves in trouble.
Yeah, well, moving on to the next sort of title contenders, really, and that's Arsenal, who are up to second, obviously, and they beat West Ham convincingly 5-2, and 5 different goal scorers for Arsenal as well. It was a great attacking performance again from them, and since Odegaard's come back, they've scored so many goals, haven't they, both in the league and in Europe. They're well and truly the second best team in the country right now, aren't they? They've had a bit of a blip and a bit of a inconsistent spell, but this form they're in right now since Odegaard's come back makes them really the next best contenders behind Liverpool, doesn't it?
Yeah, they've well and truly come back to life, I think, since Odegaard's come back in. I think that's very obvious to everyone who watches them. I think in this particular game, he just transcends their attack, and when he's on his game, they're just brilliant to watch, aren't they, Arsenal? I think their attacking game, I think for me, I think they're the best attacking team, best attacking unit probably in the league.
The goals they score are lovely to watch as well. They play some brilliant football, and I think they're one of the few teams that do that now. I think Liverpool's approach is obviously sometimes very direct. There's a lot of teams now playing on the counter, but Arsenal still stick to that philosophy, don't they?
Yeah, and I think a lot of Liverpool's attack is relied quite heavily on Mo Salah. You take him out of that team. I suppose it's a similar story to with Arsenal if Odegaard's not in there. They just look like they lack a bit of creativity. So there's an argument there for both of those two players and their importance on their attacking games. I think, obviously, we saw some of the football in this game, but I think particularly the one that obviously Saka set up. I think that ball that was floated into the box to him at the back post, and he just laid it on perfectly for a tap in the back post. It's just we just don't see them goals enough. They're so simple. They look so simple, but obviously they're not. But
no,
just make them look so effortless, don't they?
I think, Arsenal are a technically brilliant team, though. They can do that, can't they?
Oh, absolutely. I think it will do a lot of those players a lot of good, particularly Havertz and I think Trossard as well, who have probably struggled a little bit of late. I think Havertz had a great start to the season. I think he just dropped off a little bit in Odegaard's absence, but they both took the goals really well. And I don't think West Ham helped themselves at all, to be honest, defensively. I mean, how many times have we said that this season? Well, I just think they just left those spaces too frequently for me.
Yeah.
And ironically, the defense, like Wan-Bissaka, for instance, is one of the best defensive fullbacks. He's scored 2 goals in his last 2 games.
I know.
But he can't keep the door shut at the back. It's just frustrating, I think, for West Ham fans at the minute.
I think, well, you've moved me nicely on to the next topic of conversation, really, because we don't really need to say much about Arsenal. We always speak about how great they've been in the last few weeks, but West Ham, my word, they were just abysmal, like you said, defensively terrible. Even going forward, like they don't seem very, very ruthless. They're toothless, quite the opposite, really. So Lopetegui, he's under some pressure now, hasn't he? And the fans, you can just hear their reaction. They're sort of running out of patience with him too. The board must be counting the games now until he has to turn it around. And the next couple of games in the league, we looked, didn't we, at the fixture list before we went recording this. And it's Leicester City and Ruud van Nistelrooy's first game, which is going to be difficult. It's a different proposition to the Leicester City of a couple of weeks ago, that's for sure. Who's the next one? And then it's Wolves. His old club, Wolves. I mean, it's laced with narrative. I mean, if that was the place he lost his job, imagine the poetic justice that Wolves fans would feel.
I mean, you wouldn't say that one will be probably a ball draw, would you? 0-0 ball draw. The amount of goals that they're both conceding at the minute, Wolves, well, you could be looking at 5-5 or even more, potentially. You watch it be 0-0 now.
Be great entertainment if it was 5-5, blimey. But yeah, you're right. It could. I don't know how that's going to go because both teams are terrible at the minute at the back, aren't they? We'll talk about Wolves in a moment, probably. But what have West Ham got to do, Dave? Because we talked about, again, we've said this a few times, how many players they've signed, what brilliant players they've got. Somerville, for the record, scored a brilliant disallowed goal as well in this game. So there's a bit of bad luck there on their part too. But defensively, their mistakes, they're being highlighted more and more by the better opposition they play against. And Arsenal were just ruthless, weren't they? And this is the Premier League. I mean, West Ham were aspiring to be like a top 8, top 6 team, and that's why they went with Lopetegui. So do you think it's a case of 1 game or 2 games before the board loses patience? Has he got to win against Leicester, for example, do you think?
I don't know whether it's just a matter of time before he needs to look at particularly that defence and the link between defence and midfield, and whether he needs to change something in there, because
something's got to change.
It's just, it's not happening for him. Even after the really positive result at St James's Park, which I think blew a lot of us away, to be honest. So we fully expected Newcastle to probably win that one. So they've shown they've got it in them. It's just they just lack some real consistency. And then let's be honest, going forward, they really do miss like Kudus when he's not playing as well. It's just such a gaping hole when he's not in that team. Everything revolves around him. I think he has struggled a little bit at times, but he's miles away their best player for me. So they do struggle, and he's just the focal point of that team going forward. So again, I do think there's something needs to change, and that something needs to change, particularly in that midfield. I think probably in that holding position, because teams are just finding it so easy to get through them. They're getting cut through at will, and it's not just the good teams that are scoring so many goals against them.
Yeah, abysmal from West Ham so far. Something's got to change, like you say. Chelsea 3, Aston Villa 0, Dave. Not a result I saw coming, I don't think. Although Villa fans will probably disagree. They've kind of been struggling for form for a while now, haven't they? It's the first kind of the most barren run they've had under Unai Emery. But let's start with Chelsea first. 3 goals, probably could have been more. Really took the game to Villa, didn't they? Really tested that line, tested that back line, tested the defence's ability to recover from counters, and broke through 3 times in very convincing fashion. The goals that Chelsea scored, I thought, were really good. Villa didn't cover themselves with glory defensively either. Emi Martinez had a howler of a game. But let's focus on Chelsea. They look like a team that should be considering title contention. They've got a really fresh squad because they rest their players for the Conference League, which is helping loads. And I think Enzo Maresca deserves immense credit for being so brutal with his squad decisions for Europe and for the league. 2 very different teams that they've got out each time, which really helps with freshness. But also playing down like expectations. They said in the interview afterwards, didn't they, with him? So are you title contenders now? And he was like, no, it's not happening. This team's far better than us. We're not at that level yet. And Cole Palmer was the same. Did you see his interview? Really kind of like, no, it's not happening. But really dismissive. And I think they've got this idea of being an underdog, and it's helping them in some ways, isn't it? But they were very much the team on top in this game, weren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I think they're definitely becoming more consistent in their performances. I think you got to give, like you say there, I think you got to give Maresca quite a lot of credit. He's come in and there's been an upward trend in their performances. They're just consistently a lot better going forward. They're creating more opportunities. And he's found a team, it seems like, that almost he's got a best 11 now. I think he's got a good idea of what he likes, that midfield. I think he likes that base of Lavia and Caicedo in there, and even switches it up from time to time, brings Enzo Fernandez obviously into the midfield to switch things up. I think probably just freshen things up as well, and because there's so many games. But you look at the players like, for instance, Noni Madueke, who I think there were a few question marks about when he came in. Obviously, he's been playing really well at times this season. I think he's been able to getting these, not just his first 11, but getting the squad to contribute, and I think feeling valued, what we mentioned about earlier. Obviously, there was a lot of criticism earlier in the season, you're saying about obviously a lot of the players that were cast aside.
Yeah.
There was obviously a lot of criticism there, wasn't there? But I think he's handled it quite well in what was quite a chaotic start, I think, to his career at the club. They're playing some really good football. I do think consistency is going to be a thing. I think they're going to have the odd game here and there. You look against the one against United a few weeks ago. Both teams looked quite underwhelming, to be honest. I do think they are lacking a little bit there, and I think there's a few areas where they can improve. I think they're going to need probably another fullback. Reece James's fitness is still proving to be a real issue, and he's such a key man when he's fit. He's what an unbelievable talent he can be. But I do think there's areas where they can improve in this team. I still think they need to kind of streamline it a little bit, and probably get rid of a few players. We know that for sure. But yeah, another good performance against Villa. I think they were really on the front foot, I think, for the majority of the game.
Yeah, really positive.
The aggression I think they showed in the game was brilliant. Really kind of steamrolled Villa at times, and were first to a lot of the 50-50s, particularly at the midfield battle. I think they really controlled that area of the pitch, and Villa just struggled to live with them at times.
Yeah, well, somehow we managed to get Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo and Romeo Lavia all on the pitch by putting Caicedo at right back. So it was a really innovative way of working that, but it just meant when Chelsea were out of possession, their midfield changed slightly because Caicedo would kind of drop in, wouldn't he? That worked really effectively too, and he's finding strengths in players to kind of solve problems, like Reece James not being in the team. No matter, we've got Caicedo, who's a great tackler, a great reader of the game, and a great passer forward, and that worked really well. But as you say, Aston Villa, they're really struggling at the moment, and I think we've said before that European football is catching up with them. You can tell after every Champions League game and every European midweek, they seem tired, and I think they just feel void of ideas as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously Watkins missing some easy chances in this game didn't help, but they need to freshen up somehow, don't they? I think Emery's got to really stop being so stubborn with his system and go, something needs to change.
Yeah, I mean, before we came on here, we were talking about them, and I just mentioned maybe this squad isn't quite as good as what we thought it was. Maybe that's what the crux of it is, and especially it doesn't help when a lot of those players are falling out of form now as well, like Leon Bailey and John Duran stop scoring goals. And you're fully reliant on Ollie Watkins to be winning your games, and I think that puts a lot of pressure on his shoulders. It's not helpful at all. There's a lot of young players in there. You look at obviously the likes of Jaden Philogene. I've seen a few comments again about some players over the last few days. I don't think it's fair. Like, he's still a kid, and there's people saying that he should be sold. He's a championship player, etc. I can understand the frustration, but it's not nice to see those things said about such young players. You need to be given opportunities. And it's difficult because in a situation where you should have a senior player in his position who should be in form and kind of showing him the way, but there's nobody there at the moment. They've obviously got a lot of injuries as well. So they are lacking a little bit in attack, I think.
But in midfield as well, Dave, they're just not challenging. Like, they're not putting the tackles in either, are they?
No, yeah, I think I saw a stat actually that between McGinn, Tillemans and Kamara, they only managed 2 tackles between the 3 of them in the whole
felt
game.
It in the game.
Which is shocking. I saw it. I just think they just lack a bit of energy and a bit of work ethic at times, and it did feel like that. I think Kamara, since he's come back, I think he's struggled at times. I think there's been moments when he's been really positive, but came from such a serious injury. When Onana's not in there, they really do feel it, and you just want more, don't you? I think there was 21 fouls for Chelsea in this game. Villa only managed 6, despite both of them having 2 yellow cards each. It's about managing that flow of the game. And I think with Chelsea having 65% possession as well in this game, you'd expect Villa to be putting a lot more challenges if you've not got the ball.
Yeah.
Get your foot in there. That's just... Yeah, I think it's really frustrating at the moment. It must be hard, I think, for Miles at the moment because he's wondering when his newborn's going to see if Villa will get their first win.
I know, it's absolutely cursed. I mean, they're 12th in the Premier League. They're getting overtaken by the likes of Manchester United now, and I really didn't see that coming at the start of the season
level on
either.
Points, aren't they? But yeah, this is Villa with, I think they're on -3 goal difference. United are on
+3 now.
+4 now. So
+4, yeah.
Yeah.
Mad. The tables are turning. But yeah, Villa is a concern, I think. I don't think they're in any trouble, but it means that they've almost got to write this season off in some ways, and unless they can find form quickly. But looking at their bench, they've got some players coming back. Obviously, Mings is finding fitness. Buendia is coming back to fitness as well. And, they've missed a player of his kind of technical ability too. So you look at their bench and they have got some options, but I don't know what more they need to do. But just need to rotate, freshen, and be a bit more hard to beat. In this game against Chelsea, the amount of mistakes they were, unforced errors. And to be fair, Chelsea did force them into quite a few errors too. But Emi Martinez and passing the ball to Nicholas Jackson, like literally almost giving it to him and gifting him a goal, giving away a free kick inside the penalty area for a back pass. These are all like really elementary things. Why is that? What's going on? This lack of concentration is just baffling.
I don't think it helps that there's not really any consistency in the lineups at the minute. I think with the injuries and the absences at the moment, I think they are causing probably Emery to do different things with the line that we probably would like to be doing. And that's been difficult. I think obviously Ezra Konsa was at centre-back, wasn't he, with Pau Torres in this game. We mentioned that I think they need a new right-back for me. I just think Matty Cash at times, as good as he certainly has been for the club, I just think if they want to be playing in Champions League football and being in a Champions League club, I think for the future and be competing, I think they do need a better player. So yes, they definitely need to upgrade in certain positions, and I do think that, like you say, the tinkering with the different lineups and the different players coming in and out of games, don't think it's helping them at all in terms of their consistency and their play. Like you say, they just looked a little bit confused at times, and building up from the back especially. So it's just about getting them out of this spot of bother. I'm sure Villa fans are just wondering, like, when's it going to happen for us?
Yeah, I know. It's one of them seasons that's going to be not a write-off because there's so many few points connecting them where they are now to the top 4 still. That it's still anyone's game, and they just need to find form quickly, really. Like another team that seems to be starting to find form, Dave, and that's Manchester United. Ruben Amorim's Man United beating Everton 4-0 in what turned out to be a really comfortable game with some really standout performances, but it could have started so differently. I think Everton started strongly, but just didn't capitalise on that pressure. And against the run of play, we took the lead. And Amad Diallo, Dave, right wing back, right full back, bombing forward, providing assists, closing players down. So far, he's been the one that's been unlocked the most. And we said he was one to watch, both of us at the start of this season, didn't we, as someone who can have a breakout season. He's been brilliant, hasn't he? Rude started it, to be fair, but he's been great.
Yeah, I think we name dropped him one to watch. I don't think we quite envisaged him being at right wing back.
No, not
probably
at all.
At the start of the season. But you have to say he just looked built for it, don't you? The way that he plays, the way that he plays the game, it's full throttle, the intensity that he puts into his game defensively as well as going forward, just suits him down to a T. And it's great to have him, I think, as an option in there. It looks like he's now probably first name on the team sheet at the moment, to be honest, with the way he's playing. But yeah, it was great to see him contributing in this particular game. Obviously, 3 of the goals he had a massive part in. And obviously, you look at midweek and against Bodo Glint, obviously there was another moment, wasn't there, where it was a similar sort of instance as well, closing the defender down and nicking possession. I think he's really such a integral player in terms of the creative side of our game. You can't knock him at the moment. I think he's doing brilliantly. I think the main thing for me is actually this set of players, and something that I noticed that Ruben Amorim came and mentioned in his interview is if you look at the last 3 games that have played, all of his players have played in this squad, and it's about getting your players in there, feeling important, knowing they can come in and make a difference. And I think that's so key. And I think there's a lot of managers I think struggle to have that in their mentality.
Yeah, you're right. It's a human
About
element.
not just having a first 11 and a few favourites in there who you know are going to bust the gut to play for you, but having everyone under your wing must help massively.
Well, I think Marcus Rashford's kind of has been a result of that as well. Like, I feel like he needed not an arm around him necessarily, but I think Ruben Amorim has the demeanour of a guy who wants the best for people. He just seems really nice and positive and genuine and warm. And in his interviews so far, I've been really impressed by how, I don't know, welcoming he is to journalists. And Eric Ten Hag had a reputation for being quite defensive, quite spiky. He was up against it, to be fair, but I don't think that would change even if United started going through a bad run of form. He seems like he would still talk in positive terms, but call out the players that just weren't performing well. But Rashford seems, I mean, he's scored a few goals now since Amorim's been in charge. He seems like another one who will really benefit from being able to play through the middle sometimes, although it was Xerxes in this game and he got 2 goals too. But sometimes cutting in from wide as well. Like, he's playing to his strengths in whichever game and which opposition he has, which I think Rashford needs, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think it's become quite evident, I think, in the team. You look at players' decisions, I think, have actually improved. I think you look at Bruno Fernandes, for instance, in games. He's definitely been less wasteful and been more efficient, I think, with his use of the ball. I think probably not being as hasty to release the ball on long balls. I think Ruben Amorim mentioned it actually in one of his interviews that Bruno probably needs to work on a little bit. It's just his use of the ball and being more careful with it. And there's been evidence of it. I think that's the main thing for me is there's been an improvement from some of the players already. I think you mentioned Rashford there, and Amorim obviously he said the other week, didn't he, that it needs to come from Marcus himself. Like, this improvement, he has to want it first and foremost, which is absolutely true. And I think it's great to see that honesty, I think, from a manager, and not kind of pull wool over our eyes. I think it's good to see him actually giving us that honesty, and not in a nasty way either. I think it's just a matter of wanting these players to do well, like you say. But yeah, it's great to see us doing well. As another thing as well, I don't think the performance was probably great at times. I think, like you mentioned, at the beginning of the game, I think Everton were probably a little bit unfortunate, maybe not to go 1 ahead, to be honest. But we just showed that a little bit clinical edge, didn't we? I think great to see Xerxes coming in, and because he's had so much critical, I think. If you look at all over social media the last few weeks, it's awful to see. But
his build-up play is really still very positive. It's just confidence, isn't it? And he's been given a chance in this game, and he's taken it superbly. And poor Everton defence didn't really help the matter, really. But it was someone who needed that moment in his career right now because he's so young still. Him and Højlund as well. Højlund went through the same, didn't he? Where he just couldn't score for ages. But I think as soon as the floodgates open and the confidence starts flowing, it'll make such a difference. And I think having young players like that, that's how Amorim has to attack it, where it's just a case of keeping them staying positive in what they can do and proving it on the field. And so far, we've seen glimpses of that. I think United's most important player now has changed. I don't think it's Fernandes anymore. I think it's Mazraoui. I think he's such a great, intelligent footballer that seeing him shift to centre-back as well has been revelatory for him because it shows the best of his ability to view the game in front of him. Doesn't have to commit to going forward too much because obviously he's got Ahmad doing that for him. Mazraoui's been great, hasn't he?
I think he's just got a great football in mind, hasn't he? I think you can see that in the way he plays, and he just very rarely has a game that I think you might have met a couple, 2 or 3 decades back. Obviously, had a player like Dennis Irwin, who I think it was always said that he always had a 7 out of 10 game, never gave any less. And it seems like Mazraoui is that kind of player. It just
definitely
gives you that level of consistency, and I think he's probably been the player of the season for us so far. There's not been one player or
Onana,
boss,
maybe.
I think, and you look for the fee as well. Was it 14, 15 million?
Why?
I think, it just makes you wonder why Bayern Munich were trying to get rid of him, to be honest.
Yeah.
with
Great
the way he's
signing.
come in and started playing. I don't think he'd look at a place in any team in the league, if we're being honest.
No, I think it works for this back three that we're trying to fashion, though. And his reading of the game really helps someone like De Ligt as well to stay calm, because he's had moments where he's panicked too. Don't forget, we've still got Lenny Yoro to come back as well, and he will need the same kind of reassurance. He provides calm, Mazraoui, to the whole back line. I think that's been a key for us so far.
I think we need him. I've looked at the fitness of our centre-backs of late as well.
Yeah, true.
I think we could do with him being at centre-back at the moment, or one of the wider centre-backs. Because the amount of injuries we've had there over the last couple of years has been ridiculous, hasn't it?
Yeah. We talked earlier about clock ticking for Julian Lopetegui, but how long has Sean Dyche got at Everton?
Who knows? Honestly, I think we've spoken about Everton, haven't we, so much over the last 2 or 3 years, and
it needs to be sooner rather than later. I think
where
fans
do we
agree.
go next? I saw you put a clip on, because obviously we did a collab, didn't we, and with obviously another fellow Everton podcast. Was it this time last year?
Yeah, with the Unholy Trinity, which, that was about the points deduction a year ago, but not much has changed since, really.
Yeah, that's what he said, didn't he? He was like, not much has changed since, has it?
Nope.
It's just exhausting, isn't it, I think, really?
That doesn't really help his players out. He kind of almost says that he's not had money to spend on transfers, implying that his players aren't good enough. But he's got some good players in there. It's not a vintage team by any means, but there's some really standout players. I think him talking about them so negatively doesn't really help.
I think also one window is not going to change things. We've seen that with teams over the years.
He's making excuses.
It is difficult, I think. And I do sympathise in a way, because you look at what he did with them last season. He actually did really well, I think, with considering what he had to go through. Obviously, you look at the points deduction in the past as well. Again, it must come to a head, I think, where either he's had enough, probably Sean Dyche, and just there's a mutual agreement there, and says, look, I'm going to go my way and you go yours, and see where Everton what's in store for them, really, because we just don't know what the answers are. Obviously, there's this new ownership. Obviously, they'll take their path, and we'll see what becomes of the club. But it's just so far for them to go. I think there's so many answers that need to be found for them to. This again, I think there's still a lot of the new players that have come in still trying to find their way and settle as well. So I think it has been difficult, but I don't think there'll be any trouble, because I think there's so many bad teams in this league.
But saved them in so many seasons so far, hasn't it? They've been not as bad as 3 other teams.
Yeah, I think it's going to be that case again. I think they're strong enough to survive it.
That's no way to live.
They've still got some really solid players in that squad. The likes of Calvert-Lewin when he's fit, James Garner,
Jarrad Branthwaite,
exactly. I mean, if you're Branthwaite at the minute, because he's been linked away, hasn't he, again? Can you blame him for looking elsewhere, or what's going on at that club?
Could have had a chance in the summer. Could have been at Old Trafford. Didn't take it. Well, priced out of a move, wasn't he? Before we wrap up the pod, Dave, we'll go through a few of the rest of the games in the Premier League, and we can highlight some of the best of the rest from your opinion. So Wolves 2, Bournemouth 4, an unprecedented hat-trick of penalties for Justin Kluivert, which is I don't think it's ever happened, which is weird to see. Bournemouth flying, though, absolutely brilliant result for them. But Gary O'Neill looking like he's struggling. And Wolves, again, following up a good result with a really, really bad one. Brentford 4, Leicester 1. I think Brentford are another team that are flying at the minute. A Kevin Schade hat-trick there, showing that they definitely don't need Ivan Toney. Another source of goals there coming back from injury. Brighton 1, Southampton 1, making them 3rd in the table. They could have been higher if they'd have won the game, which is unbelievable. Forest 1, Ipswich 0, Chris Wood penalty. And Forest again, another one of those teams that are flying towards the top 4, which is brilliant. Palace 1, Newcastle 1, an important point for Palace again. They really celebrated at the end of that game like it was a win, but they needed that point, really. And Spurs 1, Fulham 1. So which of those games stood out for you, Dave?
Well, the Wolves one, any game as Wolves in probably doesn't lack entertainment, that's for sure. But
they were so bad.
Just the defensive errors. Every single penalty that they conceded was just so easily avoidable, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think the first one with Totti, I just don't know why he needs to go to ground there. Like the angle's narrowing every second that the striker's obviously going for Evan Nilsson. Yeah, the angle's against him there. I think the goalkeeper's got a good opportunity. He's very close to the striker as well. Yeah. Don't know why he needs to dive in there.
No, just
that's the first one. Then Jose Sarr, obviously, just acts like he's got all the time in the world.
It must be infuriating, though, to see your back line trying to sort of casually play it out and come undone, not just once, but numerous times. It's just learn the lesson, just hoof it clear.
And he just gets played into trouble, doesn't he, with the third penalty? And
Yeah.
for a player to score 3 penalties in a game, I think you've got to have a lot of nerve, actually, to do that. And I'm sure there would have been conversations probably between him and others on the pitch saying, do you want to give it to me this time? Because we've seen players do it before, haven't we?
Well, Evan Nielsen won all 3 of them. So, like, he should have, by right, said, I'll take this one. But how can you when he's on 2? Yeah, you're right. He's not short on confidence, is he, Justin Kluivert? But, 3 penalties. The odds are against you on the 3rd one to score that one, but he did. So, fair play to him. Brentford 4, Leicester 1, Dave, I thought was an impressive result as well. Obviously, Leicester, not yet with Ruud van Nistelrooy in the dugout, but Brentford, we've said loads about them. But Schade is a player we haven't seen much of through injury, but he looked brilliant, didn't he?
Yeah, and I've always actually seen quite a lot said about Schade and the potential that he's got, but not quite seen him piece it together in his short career at Brentford. But we did see he can find those bits of magic, I think, in those spaces in behind. I think particularly for the last goal, I think he took that goal really well. And the second one, the little dink, that was such a great finish.
Really good, yeah.
So, again, it won't hurt them as well to have those options, because obviously you mentioned now the outgoings of Ivan Toney. They certainly don't look like they're missing him at the moment. They're probably having their strongest season I've seen them have for a long while.
Well, yeah, they've got 2 players in the top 10 goal scorers with Visser and Mbeumo as well. So, yeah, not short of goals at all. But this week, Dave, in the middle of the week, there's a ton of Premier League games. That's even before we get to the weekend. So there's loads of football to come. December's relentless, isn't it? Arsenal playing United midweek. So United could derail Arsenal's title challenge potentially, because Liverpool go to St James's Park, which at the minute is not a difficult place to go to as it used to be. Yeah, it could be all changed. Which game are you looking forward to, mate?
What you're saying, the title race is going to be done after this midweek?
It feels like it, doesn't it? It feels like it. If any team below Liverpool drops points, it could be like curtains, because I think Liverpool is so relentless. The biggest game is Man City versus Forest. Imagine if Forest win that. Like, they'll be dreaming all over again. They'll overtake City. Yeah, who'd have saw that one coming? But yeah, fascinating to see. Please do keep in contact with us on Blue Sky. We're quite active on there, all of us. So if you want to chip in on football opinions and comment on what we're saying, that'd be a great place to start. We've got our YouTube community talk on there. But like, subscribe and follow wherever you see us. Me and Dave will be back next week to talk about this epic week of Premier League action. Looking forward to it, mate. Are you?
Can't wait. Just chaos, isn't it?
It is mad, isn't it?
Full speed ahead.
I'm sure the players are feeling it too. But yeah, join us for that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we'll see you soon. Cheers.